started and get this recorded. Hi, Kate. Good to see you. Yeah, and I'm gonna go ahead and start to share my screen. Happy Lionsgate, guys. This is a twofer today. We're talking about the Lionsgate, as you know, and we are going to be talking about the Eclipse. And so I just want to start off by saying thank you to everybody who's here live. And I know there's those of you guys are going to watch this later. But I just wanted to say that this gathering is kind of a neat thing for me because this is another layer that we're adding today. You know, some of you guys have probably joined for some lunar, new moon, or full moon gatherings or some seasonal stuff. But this is the first time I think I'm really trying to weave together the astrology, the herbalism, the ritual with the herbs, as well as the contemplative practice. So, you know, we're going to learn about eclipse season. We're going to learn about the Lion's Gate. But I really kind of want it to be more of an experience. And as you know, we have two of these gatherings. This is the first one. And so let's go ahead and just start to look at, you know, where the journey is going to take us today. I kind of like to start by giving us a map, you know, because for me personally, when I know where I'm going, sometimes I can just relax and be like, okay, I can enjoy the journey. So we're going to start today with the Lionsgate portal because we're here on August the 8th, which is the modern day Lionsgate portal. We're going to keep going and explore the solar eclipse, the Leo solar eclipse. We're also going to look at where this eclipse chart falls, where this eclipse falls in your birth chart. That's a very kind of basic way to interpret the astrological occurrences, but it can be really interesting to look at how this eclipse might be pinging a certain area of your life. And then after that, we're going to meet the herbal ally for this lunar cycle. We're going to be talking about the rose, specifically Lincoln's heritage rose. And then we're going to close with a meditation and an opportunity for a ritual. So lots to cover, but I hope that it's going to be at a nice, easy pace. And like I said, you know, as we go along, if there's anything you want to add, I have a couple questions for us, but if you have any questions, just pipe up. I like these gatherings because they're intimate enough that we can really do that. So I guess I want to just start and say, has anybody intentionally worked with an eclipse before? I mean, I know some of you guys have been around with me for some time. Peralta says yes. Anybody have anything they want to share? It might be a little bit too early for us to start that. But okay. So you know, why this gathering? Um, you know, I've been thinking a lot the last year of what I'm really trying to do with Everything is Energy podcast and with this apothecary. And, you know, on one hand, I think you guys know me because I like to teach astrology, but you know, or herbalism or meditation. But I really think the longer I do this stuff, they're more like layers or different doorways to the same thing. And I want us to kind of maybe start to experience that today because astrology really gives us the context. It helps us to understand those larger cycles that are afoot. But I love the herbs because they invite us into relationship. So, you know, instead of rushing through as our want, they really invite us to slow down and to participate with the rhythms of this planet. And, you know, I think when we get to the ritual, which we're going to get, I think there's the opportunity to transform something into our own lived experience. And I really think it's great that we're all here together in a circle because as we know, there's energy in circles. So let's go ahead and get to the Lion's Gate. Um, you know, it's become increasingly popular over the last, in modern times, the last 10 years at least, you know, 8-8 has become to be recognized as this symbolic portal. But I mentioned it in the podcast. I have a couple more things to add, but I think it's interesting for us to look at where this comes from. You know, I like to go back to Egypt because thousands of years ago, they were carefully observing the heliacal rising of Sirius. They were looking at the sky. Sirius is the brightest star in the sky. And for them, it wasn't just an astronomical event. As I mentioned, it coincided with the flooding of the Nile. And even though the Nile no longer floods in modern times, it's been dammed up. If you look at Egypt, everywhere where there is growth right now, that's where the silt was deposited. So this was about their fertility, their renewed life, the beginning of a cycle. So Sirius, the star that they spotted, became associated with those qualities, renewal, abundance, and this kind of promise of a new life cycle. And when we think about the Lion's Gate, we're drawing inspiration from this history. And even though our modern calendar and the actual heliacal rising of Sirius no longer exactly align, I think it's meaningful whether or not the dates line up perfectly right now. So I want to start with just kind of looking at Sirius. And as I mentioned, it's the brightest star in our night sky. And the Egyptians associated Sirius with Sopdet, and later Greek traditions associated with the dog star. I should also mention, though, that the Comedians who came before the Egyptians, one of the women who I studied with, Patricia Corey, she wrote this book, Where Pharaohs Dwell. And she spent a lot of time in Egypt with this guy. And he was the last of a lineage. It was actually a matriarchal lineage. His name was Hakim, and he was the last male surviving that was Comedian. And they spoke of this knowledge of Sirius A, B, and C. And when I read this, it really, if you've ever looked at the Dogon tribe and how they knew about um, Sirius A, B, and C long before the invention of modern telescopes where we can access this stuff. So the Comedians that preceded the Egyptians understood Sirius A, B, and C to be an expression of the myth of Isis and Osiris. And when I read this book, I'll just kind of say this, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it seemed to me that they understood the personification or the intelligence of the stars, and whether or not they projected it onto there or they received it from the stars. There was something really important to the ancient Egyptians about the star Sirius. And while one thing was about the Nile flooding, as I put here right in the middle of this slide, I think it's worth just pausing for a second and considering what it was like to live back then, because we're so fast right now with our computers and with our life. And what if we were just waiting for a star to appear on the dawn horizon? What if that's all we did for like 3 weeks because we knew that was going to be the start of something? And if we're thinking about and seeking to live in cycles, that was a huge cycle for them, right? And and I like coming together in a gathering because it kind of reminds us that we're still living beneath the same stars. That even though our lives may feel so different, that there's not, maybe there's still some of the similar medicine that we can observe here. And so let's get to kind of the Lionsgate. This is my own interpretation, and Patricia Corey mentions it, but what the Sphinx is a lion, it's a cat with a human's head. But if we think about the way it's described today in the 8-8 portal, if you listen to any, I haven't listened to anybody else's stuff on this year, but they talk about it as that time of heightened creativity, of courage, of heart-centered living, of new possibilities. And so I kind of think about it as an energetic time, but whether or not you think about it as a portal proper, I just think it's a really beautiful time for us to entertain, the question, how do we want to step into this next chapter? And I don't see the Lion's Gate any more than I see eclipses as something that necessarily suddenly change us. It's more of a reminder that there's energy afoot and our consciousness can be intentional. And so this feels especially meaningful right now because, as we know, we're going to talk about it next. Just a couple days later on the 12th, we have the Leo solar eclipse, which marks the brand new beginning of a 6-month cycle. So I really want us to just sit for a second, maybe take a deep breath in. Come into your body, come into this gathering, come into this moment, wherever you're at. Exhale. And just consider the question, what new chapter am I ready to step into? And as with all questions, there doesn't necessarily need to be a proper full-blown answer. We're just swinging the door open. What new chapter? And I want to, as we're considering this, bring us to the energy of Leo itself. And we're going to kind of transition within, from the Lion's Gate into the Leo solar eclipse, and they both have this lion energy, right? But, sometimes people think of Leo as self-expression, confidence, spotlight, and those are certainly part of Leo's energy. But, I think that the optimal version of Leo is about living from our heart, and it's about expressing the gifts that we've been given. But I would offer that we're expressing them not for the ego, not for the recognition, not for the spotlight per se, but because the world needs our authenticity. And I think now more than ever, we can feel that. And, if we think about the energy of our heart is generous, it's loving, it's creative, it's celebratory. And that's all that kind of heart-centered living. That to me is the energy of Leo. And so if we kind of pair that last question of, what new chapter am I ready to step into? There's another more nuanced thing for us to consider. Where is my life asking me to be more fully me? And those two questions do not need to be separate. Maybe there's something about a new chapter for us that's opening now or in a few days or within the next 6 months. But what part about that might be authenticity? Because I think, as I mentioned, we can feel that our light is here for a reason and that we're not simply meant to be as fit ourselves round peg into a square hole. We're really being invited in this time to kind of like the lotus root down deeply and prepare to bloom at some point in the future. And so we think about that authenticity, and I'm now going to slowly transition into the eclipse. And I'm going to add a little bit of information. A solar eclipse is different from a new moon. And I'm going to stop this share here. I'm going to go real quickly to the work of a guy who is a mathematician. Gosh, I want to say it was at some Nevada university. My apologies. I have his book here with me. His name is James Ross Godby, and he wrote this book called The Still Point, The Geometry of Consciousness. And it's very obvious in this book that he's a mathematician because it's a hard read, I'm not going to lie. But I want to share this thing up from his website with you because it's when I saw this, it really kind of landed some things for me. So this isn't it. This is it. Okay. So here's his website, stillpointdesign.org. So here's the eclipse that we're going to look at here in a couple days' time, right? We have a new moon completely blocking out the light of the sun. James Ross Godby was, to my understanding, the first mathematician who overlaid sacred geometry to this phenomenon. And if I scroll down here and open this up, he found that the inner circle, the flower of life, expresses the perfect match to the alignment of the sun, the moon, and the earth, which is what allows us to experience eclipses. So the little brown dot in the middle is our moon. The beige circle in the center is the earth. And if you look down at the bottom little left corner here, it says sun. It says 400th layer sphere. And he's referring to the 400th layer sphere of the flower of life. And he calls it a communication. And whether or not you believe it's a communication, when I saw that, I really just kind of felt like there was not that I needed any more confirmation, but it really helped my scientific mind meet my metaphysical mind, whatever, right? Like this, that's true. That's a math equation right there. And that's super cool. And so there was something so magical about this understanding of what an eclipse might even mean or be able to communicate with us. So let me get back to this next slide. I also wanted to say, wait. Okay, so in this book, Still Point Geometry, after he does that, he looks at this geometry of the Great Pyramid of Egypt and he finds that the Great Pyramid of Egypt is matched to that flower of life geometry that um, is articulated in the schematic about the eclipses, which also just, I don't know, caused me to blow a fuse. So let's get to just a high level of what this might mean. I think we're talking about a solar eclipse right now. We'll talk about the lunar eclipse in a couple weeks. And I often think about them as times that lift us up and out of linear time and space, right? So they can cause accelerated change. But I also want to say something about that instead of per se something totally new happening around an eclipse, they tend to illuminate what's already trying to get to come out and to emerge. They kind of invite us to notice where life might be moving us towards something. And it can be beyond linear time and space, but there's this kind of idea that our consciousness has been tapping into something or seeding something, that there's a bigger pattern happening, just like that eclipse schematic. And so one of my favorite ways to think about eclipses is more like chapters rather than days. And I mentioned this in the podcast, even the eclipse is exact on August 12th. That's fantastic. We tend to spend the next 6 months discovering what that actually was all about. So, you know, what wants to begin, what wants to be seen, what wants to change are some themes that we might um, start to entertain here. And now let's layer the Leo layer on top of this, right? So every zodiac sign gives us a little bit of a different lesson. And as I mentioned, Leo's reminding us to live from our heart and to ask us to stop performing who we think we should be and to become most authentically ourselves. So this doesn't mean dramatic change, but it might sometimes, I would almost say ironically with Leo, even though it seems to be a very extroverted sign, and it is, that sometimes that shift, the most powerful part of that shift is within us. A willingness to trust ourselves, a willingness to create something we've been postponing, or allow our hearts to become a little bit more visible. So there's this aspect of Leo that is very tender, if you've known any Leos, that even though there's a big show, there's also something so sweetly authentic that can come out. And Leo's inviting us all to that space. So what we're going to do next is we're just going to do a fun um, exploration of looking at our birth charts. And, the Leo solar eclipse is the same place in the zodiac for everybody, but it's going to activate a different house in your birth chart depending on your birth chart. And so I'm going to walk us through this next. And I just kind of want to say that it's not about predicting a specific event. We're going to maybe look at, just like the 12 houses are kind of like slices of pie that depict an area of life that might be being activated. Does anybody have any questions before we get there, or anything you want to say? I've been talking for a good 20 minutes so far. Okay, let's go. Let's get back to sharing my website, and then we're gonna look at, I'm gonna pop this link into the chat in case you don't have your birth chart. Oh gosh, hold on. There we go. In case you don't have your birth chart in front of you right now, my computer's taking its own time. Thank you guys I'm putting in the chat this link where you can enter your birth information. This is a little app that I created. It's super duper duper simple on purpose. And I'll share with you what I'm going to do. And it's almost too simple if you're really going to try to look at anything astrologically, but I like it because it says just what we need to know right now for our purposes of, I'm putting in my birth information in case you guys are wondering what I'm doing. And I'm going to use my own birth chart as an example here. So you're going to get a chart that's, as I mentioned, for astrological chart purposes, pretty hard to read. But if you scroll down beneath this chart, it gives you your planetary placements, Wait, what happened? In the middle, it gives you your houses and your zodiac signs. So you're just going to look at where Leo is. We're looking specifically for 20 degrees, Leo, but for the purposes of our gathering today, um, this particular house system that this app uses is a whole house system. So it's just going to show, for me, Leo's in the 10th house. So what we're going to do next, and I'm going to put these tools in for those of you that are a part of the membership portal here, we're going to go to the Lunar Herbal Alchemy membership portal. This information is going to be available to all you guys. I'm going to put it on that website. I'm going to put it on a web page where you can find it during this eclipse season. But if you're a member, you can go to the Leo solar eclipse through the houses, and you're just going to do something really simple, which is scroll down to which house Leo is in. And I'll really quickly, if Leo 20 degrees of Leo is in your first house, then this means that this eclipse is going to be activating those themes about self and identity. And I have here a reflection question that you might want to entertain if Leo is in your first house. So this means the eclipse may invite you to release old identities. It's a South Node eclipse, by the way, I didn't mention that. And so we can lightly, really quickly go through this. We can come back if you've actually, let's spend a little bit of time here since I did say that this was something. If you happen to know that this eclipse falls in your second house, that's the house of values and resources. So eclipses are simultaneously, this one's is shining a light and it's inviting us to release something as we're seeding. That's the nature of it being a South Node solar eclipse. So maybe you're invited to release some outdated beliefs about your worthiness or your worth. And maybe it's something new's coming through to help you align with your true gifts. If this eclipse is in your third house, the theme that might be affected in your life is something around your communication and your learning. Potentially your voice is the focus here. Maybe there's new ways of communicating or teaching. Maybe there's an old pattern that's ready to fall away. If 20 Leo is in your fourth house. So do you guys see how I did this? If you look at your birth chart, you're going to look for where the little squiggly ponytail symbol of Leo is. And I can help you, anybody who needs this, maybe even after this or at the end, I'm happy to do that. But if you use the app, the little website app that I built, it's going to tell you real quick. So you don't even have to know how to read a chart. And then in that house, that's where, because this eclipse is for you specifically in that house, that means that that's what it's going to be affecting. So fourth house is the house of home, ancestors. So maybe there's something within your home and family life. Maybe it's inviting you to strengthen the relationship you have with yourself before you're seeking stability outside yourself. Fifth house is creativity and joy and play. Leo loves this house. So this is about those themes. Maybe you'll rediscover a passion or finally give yourself permission to pursue something. Sixth house is your house of habits, daily life. Your routines are going to be focused on here. So the eclipse might be asking you whether the day-to-day stuff in your life is reflecting the person who you're becoming. Maybe there's some habits to be changed. Move on to the seventh house. If this eclipse is in your seventh house is house of relationships. Maybe there's some new beginnings within partnerships. Maybe you're going to release a partnership that no longer supports you. There's that theme of authenticity that's still present here, though. Go to the eighth house, house of transformation, shared resources. So by definition, you're going to be with an eclipse there, pretty deeply transformative. So themes around shared resources, intimacy, vulnerability. Maybe you need to release something to make room for something that's more empowered and authentic. Ninth house, house of beliefs and expansion. Maybe your worldview is expanding. This is a very Sagittarius energy. So maybe you want to study or travel or do some kind of spiritual exploration. Or maybe there's some old beliefs that are quietly just sloughing off. 10th house, career and purpose. This is where, if you remember, this is where my Leo eclipse is. So this is about your public life, your long-term direction. Maybe there's something that's in your professional work that's being brought to a new light. But also with Leo, this isn't about status. This is about authenticity. 11th house is the house of community, communication still, but it's more about communal future dreams. Maybe there's some new collaborations. Maybe you're going to be invited towards communities that are more authentically you. Finally, 12th house, inner life, spirit. And this might be the most subtle expression, but this is about the transformation beneath the surface. So maybe it's about intuition or dreams or meditation. And those changes, if Leo's in the 12th house, this might not be a super loud eclipse for you in the sense that everyone can say, oh, whoa, whoa, look what happened. But there might be something really powerful that transpires for you. Does anybody have any questions about that? Oh, I stopped my share. I could keep the screen up if you do. Okay. Let's see what else we got going on here. What's next? Okay, so we're going to talk next about our herbal ally. And this tea I'm drinking here, this is grown up here on the farm. This is I call it Lincoln's Heritage Rose. It's also called Lincoln's Tea Rose. It's a super long stemmed red rose. I feel like the stems are sometimes 2 feet long, which is crazy. I've broken a couple flower vases with these guys. But these are the roses. If you're a member proper of the Lunar Herbal Alchemy Circle already, your herbs, your rose petals are in the mail to you. You should get them by Monday. There'll be the opportunity for anybody who's not to, if you want to buy some from the store or join later, you can. But I want to also really share, let me stop this share and share with you kind of not that one's better than the other, but your traditional rose petals. This comes from the California Wild Rose, but if you go and buy rose petals in any kind of a tea store, you're going to get these wonderful little smelling rose petals. These roses, oops, I just broke this. They're so big. They're huge red rose petals, and they color this tea, as you can see, is like super red, and the nose on the tea is pretty fantastic. So I'm personally excited because I feel like even though we grow both, my whenever I do a tea, I love to have the fragrance and the color because I just feel like that experience is such a neat part for us. So we're gonna look at Lincoln's Heritage Rose next. Let me just find, okay. So I kind of just want to say that, rose is often about beauty, as we know. We think about, especially long stem red roses. But I'm going to get into a little bit of the history here because the rose plant is edible. The leaves are edible. The flowers are edible. It's medicinal. It's been used for fragrance and ceremony and ritual throughout history. So let's just look real quick at how a couple of different civilizations used these. Egyptians are some of my favorites. They associated roses with beauty and devotion and sacred offerings. Persians also cultivated roses. Persians developed rose water, if you remember. Greek physicians, including Dioscorides, described the medicinal preparations of rose, and then Romans celebrated rose with festivals and ceremonies. And even in medieval Europe, the monasteries grew roses in their medicinal gardens. In Ayurveda, rose is used as to cool heat, and we'll get to its uses next. But what I find out about this, I wanted to put a slide here because it's just so interesting to me, kind of on the heels of Egypt and the Egyptians. If we think about across thousands of years of time and how many different people and cultures consistently recognize something about this plant and about this flower. And I just think that there's something really wonderful about that. And so if you are a member of the membership, we just did rose hips. We're doing rose petals now. And I want to kind of just talk about here the energetics of the rose flower. And if we talk about energetics, we're describing how the plant tends to be experienced in the body. So rose is considered cooling, gentle, and also slightly drying or astringent. So it's perfect if you're like me and sitting out on a really hot summer day. It's used to soothe excess heat. It's used to calm irritation. It's also used to support the digestive system. And as we all probably know, emotionally, rose is associated with the heart and with feelings of love, but this is beyond romance. It's a plant that reminds us of all things of love, right? So we're talking about compassion and resilience. and tenderness. And I think if we're being asked anything at this point with this eclipse season is to really remain with our hearts open, deeply rooted, open heart. We're in a time of tremendous change on our planet. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to use rose for eclipse season, because eclipses often bring about change, and the rose is reminding us that we don't have to force it. We think about the metaphor of what a rose does, and we'll get to the cycle of a rose. But for those of you who are members, I can pull this up for everybody, but there's monographs that are available to you for each herb, and there's a monograph that goes through the research about the benefits of rose. At a high level here right now, I'll just speak to some of this. You guys can go look at the research, but for the purposes of our gathering, you know, I you guys likely know that I'm studying to finish my doctorate degree here in natural medicine, because I really want to merge the traditional herbal wisdom with the modern science research. I think there's something really wonderful happening in our world right now where that is possible now more than ever, where the science and the esoteric are getting together. So here I have on this slide. Let's get back to this. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, anthocyanins. I don't know if I said that right. Some volatile oils that are aromatic. All those things contribute to its antioxidant properties as well as to their fragrance. So, research has documented that rose supports emotional well-being, which is fantastic. That's one of the ways it's been used throughout history. It also supports digestive comfort. It supports skin health, hence the rose water. And it also supports protection against oxidative stress. And so I like to think that the science is kind of excavating some of the ways, maybe, or uncovering ways that traditional herbalists have observed this plant or plants for centuries. And I just wanted to, if we're thinking about the energetics on one level, is how it affects our body. I want to kind of help us step out beyond, one of the ways in the Western world we're used to, I have a headache. What can I take? Oh, ibuprofen, pop the pill, solve the problem, right? And I think if we're thinking about herbalism and plants as our source of food and medicine, there's much more of a relationship. So instead of, we naturally ask what's this herb good for? And that's a really important question. But I have this slide because I feel like, how can we build a relationship with this plant? And you can look at the rose in the garden, you can harvest the petals, you can enjoy it as tea, you can make an incense, you can offer it as a ritual. There's so many different ways. And that's what I love about, we're going to get to a couple of those in a second. And I think that that's a gift that is really needed right now, is to work with the energy of the plant, to slow down, to have a cup of tea, to take time to have the experience. And I think as much as the plant is the medicine, the intention and the energy around what we do and how we experience the plant is as much of the medicine as the plant might be. And I just kind of wanted to invite us to consider, how might our relationship with the plant change if we spend an entire month living with it, working with it, experiencing it? And I only say that because that's kind of the way that I've come to know the herbs that I know the best are the ones that I grow and the ones that I experience for an entire lunar cycle. And you can kind of imagine, right, that would be the case for each of us. We really get to know it internally. We're not just reading it on a website or in a book. We're having our own experience of it. So there's lots of different ways for us to experience this plant. You can make a tea, you can infuse it with honey. We talk about in the membership portal, I have ways for instructions for how to make oxymels and tinctures. And you could also just simply sit beside the plant. We're going to do a little bit of a meditation here, but this is the first time I'm offering an incense teaching, and we're going to do this in two phases. We're going to do the simpler incense today with the solar eclipse, and we're going to make cone incense in a couple weeks with rose. And I wanted to make it as accessible as possible, because some of this stuff in herbalism can feel a little bit too far removed, and I really don't think that it needs to be, or that it should be. So let me see. Let me go to sharing again, and I'm in the membership portal here, but for those of you guys who this stuff will be accessible to you on a public website just for the purposes of this month. But we're going to go to the rituals and astrology. Oh, no, no, no. We're going to herbal preparations form. I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. So this is where we're going to get to have some instructions as to how to make this loose leaf incense. And for those of you guys who aren't members, you can see that I've written a couple ebooks about elixirs and infusions and decoctions. This is really a part of the portal that's meant to help us understand how to work with plants and not be intimidated by it. And all you really need is some dry rose petals and some kind of a fireproof bowl and some matches. And I'm going to step away from this right now, and I'm just going to show you a couple ways that you could be working with this incense. So a censer is something that they definitely use. I was raised Catholic, and it's one of those things that has a holes in the bottom and top. And if you've ever seen anybody like the Pope swing that smoke around, that's a censer. And they often do use frankincense to get but you know, there's little ways for you to burn incense. You could also simply find a plate that you don't care about, and what you're going to want to do in its most mundane way, you could use a birthday candle, you could use a regular candle, but you're going to want to use something that you don't care that much about. I wanted to add the opportunity. These are little frankincense tears or nodules. This is the resin of the frankincense tree, and I love to use frankincense as a starter for incense. You can also use, if you want to, many people, if you go to herbal shops, you'll find little charcoal. There's a little silver thing full of a charcoal tab, and you can use a charcoal tab. You can also use something called, the Native Americans use something called copal. It comes in these little, uh, they wrap it up nice, and it's very much like a frankincense. It's a resin. So resins, myrrh might work equally. A resin is something that you can light, and you could put your little frankincense tears, light the frankincense. That's going to create a flame. And then if you have your rose petals, you could do one of two things. You could crinkle it up, and as the flame is about to extinguish, put those rose petals right over those coals. The point is that the coals need to be hot, and you're putting the dry petals on them. Alternatively, if you have a little tea strainer, the other thing you can do, I have one that's dedicated just for incense, is light a candle, put the rose petals in here, and put this, obviously you want a fireproof vessel, and put this in the flame, and you're going to start to get the smoke of the rose. So all of that is in the membership portal. And I think it's a really nice way for us to start. As I mentioned, I want this to be accessible, even though the next thing we're going to do is in a couple of weeks is learning how to make cone incense from the rose petals. Just smelling the roses, these roses smell so great as a tea and as well as as an incense. Does anybody have a question? What, Teresa? Teresa, I'll get you your question at the end. Thank you for it, since I've already moved on. Okay. So in the membership portal and in the materials that I'll give you guys, there's an opportunity for us not just to make the incense, but to do a ritual with the incense and potentially with the tea. And I just want to put a pin in frankincense. If you happen to have access to frankincense, natural food stores in their little tea section often do have frankincense resin. We sell it on our store online. If anybody needs any, you can reach out to me. But you know, there's frankincense has accompanied sacred ceremonies for thousands of years. So if you happen to get your hands on some frankincense, I think now's a really uh great time. And for premium members of the membership, part of the ritual is going to be, I included a little mini crystal ball, because to me that represents perspective, and eclipse doesn't just change the sun, it changes how we see things. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to say that that ritual will be available to us. And I'm going to lead us now into a meditation, but I wanted to pause and just thank you guys for being here and see if anybody has anything they would like to ask or share.
I'll share a couple of things. Um, Once again, a wonderful presentation, Lisa Marie. And um, I was thinking I had actually a wonderful Lincoln Rose. Um, and I was away, of all things, in Egypt for several weeks, which is another story. But the deers got it and decimated it. But anyway, it was my favorite. And you're right about the unique qualities of its fragrance. But in Egypt, they spend a lot of time with essential essences, and it really is part of their culture. It's really quite unique. And I'd also make mention of the amazing representations of cosmology within the temples, particularly the Metonic cycle, which is part and parcel of what we're talking about with eclipse season, the 18 and a half year cycle, and seeing the depictions of the eclipse cycle on the ceiling of the temples in Egypt. One in particular in which you cannot imagine how they have painted with such detail um, in the complete dark. Anyway, I just wanted to reaffirm your sentiments that you expressed earlier about Egypt and their cosmology.
Thank you, Tony. For those of you guys who don't know Tony, he is an astrology mentor and dear friend of mine who also shares a love of Egypt. And gosh darn it, we're going to get you to speak to us about astrology as a guest sometime soon. I just said it to the public. So thank you for sharing.
Certainly.
And I love that you were just there like just about a month ago. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else have anything they want to share? Okay, let's go. I'm going to put up for the purposes of the meditation. I like to give us something to look at, even though I'm going to encourage you to close your eyes in the next little bit. But we're going to shift gears here a little bit, and we're going to drop into just some breathing and a meditation here for the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes. We'll see how long we go. But I just want to invite you to make yourself comfortable. Keep your camera on, keep your camera off, do whatever, turn yourself to the side, whatever helps you to feel like you can be here now. And, just let your body be comfortable. Notice that your spine is straight. You can lie down if you want. If you're seated, just kind of in your mind's eye, when your eyes are closed, feel that your shoulders are over your hips. And go ahead and begin just by taking a nice, slow, longer breath in through your nose and really just see if you can experience all of the aspects of how it feels to draw that breath in. And as you release the breath, do so through your mouth and take your time. And notice how that exhalation feels. And we'll do that a couple more times. Just a nice slow breath in through the nose. And release the breath through the mouth. And imagine as you breathe in that you're calling your attention and your consciousness into this moment as you breathe in. And as you release the breath, any distraction, any tension, anything that's ready to release is just going to be released. And from there, just sort of allow yourself to settle into just maybe a little bit more deep, but some type of breath that feels natural. And I'm going to invite you to imagine maybe take a little journey with me that you're on a boat on the Nile River, one of those boats with sails. And this is in ancient times. You're sailing on the river and you see the Great Pyramid. And even though in modern times the Nile doesn't quite go by the Great Pyramid, in ancient times it did. There was an aspect, there was a fork of the Nile that went right up. And so this ship is starting to sail right up toward the pyramid. And you can kind of feel the warmth of the breeze. There's palm trees and reeds, and maybe some herons and storks that are in the reeds as you're approaching the edge of the shore. And this boat is going to dock you right at the shore, and the pyramid is just beyond. And you get out of the boat, and you're wearing something that helps you manage the desert heat. You've got sandals on. You're walking up to this pyramid, and we're doing so thousands and thousands of years ago. So imagine that this pyramid is alive. It was covered with this white limestone sheathing, so it was almost even hard to look at. It was so bright, but there were these lush gardens, and they were preparing some kind of a celebration. So there's people afoot, maybe priests and priestesses. You're kind of weaving your way through these gardens, and there's just this natural fragrance in the air, and there's this energy that they're preparing for something. And you kind of pass through the main courtyard, and as you're about to enter down this long corridor of columns, you kind of instinctually pause before these columns and you look to your right and your left, and there are these two immense lions, huge stone lions. And even though they're stone, you pause and you can feel that they're feeling you. Vetting sounds a little too aggressive, but they're just reading you as if, are you ready to proceed? And you get this sense that they've seen you, all of you, and it's as if these energetic gates open and you now proceed down this long corridor. And you're greeted by Egyptian god Thoth at the doorway to the Great Pyramid. And if you don't know who Thoth is, that's okay. He is sort of a bird-headed god, and he was associated with wisdom and knowledge and language. And he was seen as this sort of scribe and keeper of wisdom. And so he's greeting you at the door to the Great Pyramid as if to invite you to walk inside with him. And you walk inside with him, and he guides you inside the pyramid, and he guides you to a set of stairs that leads you up into the queen's chamber of the Great Pyramid. And at this point, you're sort of going it alone. You feel very safe. You walk up into this vast rectangular stone chamber. And you get the sense that even though there's only you in human form, that you're not necessarily alone here. There's an energy that's inside this chamber. And there's four little square holes in the wall. They're called star shafts or air shafts. And one of them in particular seems to have this kind of hum or light coming through it around the time of the Lion's Gate. And you kind of just walk near it and you can start to feel and experience this light. And this is the light of the Lion's Gate, the light of Sirius, coming through into this chamber. And as it's flooding into this chamber, sort of, if you've ever done music or acoustics, if there's four square stone walls, that reverberation is going to start to kick up. And it's as if this light is amplifying. This hum is getting more intensified. This light from Sirius is now moving through you, and it's taking up all the space in this chamber. And it's starting to turn this white-blue hue. And just allow yourself to sort of be with this energy here, as if you're receiving the light from this star in this chamber. and allow yourself to experience this light, potentially even above and beyond words or things that are really associated with the light, your life in this moment. Just allow yourself to receive this light as if it's kind of upgrading or informing your cells, your consciousness, as if it's raising your vibration, almost to prepare you for the eclipse and what's to come in the future. And just notice what the tone of the energy is, what the hum of the energy is. Is it peace? Is it grace? Is it love? Is there something more? You don't have to put a word to it, but just allow yourself to kind of bask, receive this energy. And then at some point, sort of feel like your cup has been filled. The energetic signature has been received or recorded inside of you, and you can maybe send a pulse of gratitude to that star shaft or up to Sirius to thank it for this transmission. You kind of know that it's time to leave this chamber. As you go back down the way that you came in, and Thoth greets you, still inside the chamber, and asks you what happened, what you received. And instead of speaking to this ancient Egyptian god of wisdom in words, do so through your third eye. Imagine that you can just sort of open your third eye and communicate the energetic signature that you received. And Thoth understands and then proceeds to walk you back out of the pyramid. And now you're in daylight, and there's still this hum, there's this buzzing, there's people, priests and priestesses and all sorts of people just milling about, and you're drawn into that courtyard that you passed by. And imagine it just being so lush and verdant, full of trees, full of plants, and your eye is caught by a red rose bush. And go ahead and wander over to whatever corner of this courtyard this beautiful red rose bush is, and feel as if you're being invited to sit beside it. And as you come to sit beside it, you're now sort of energetically very sensitive. You can almost kind of feel your energetic field merge with that of the rose. And you can start to feel its own signature. And maybe you just sit beside it and receive whatever this energy is. Maybe you look right at the rose and let its visage share with you its sharp thorns, its beautiful green leaves that are food for humans, its fragrant flowers that are in full bloom. But just spend a little bit of time here communing with this rose. And as you're doing this, you're outside in this courtyard, sort of adjacent to the pyramid. And the sky begins to go dark, and you look up and you realize that sort of beyond space and time, the eclipse is here. And maybe you don't look with your eyes, but you close your eyes and you raise your third eye just to receive whatever reset, whatever information is meant for you specifically to come from the sun, pass through the moon. And as I mentioned earlier, maybe this information is about shedding something as well as welcoming something in. Maybe it's just one or the other right now. There's nothing right or wrong about what you receive. And if there's nothing in particular, just note that maybe in the next weeks to come there will be something. And so now your awareness, the darkness of the sky begins to fade again. The eclipse is moving on, and you're still seated beside this rose bush in this great courtyard, and you can feel that the rose is as intelligent as you are, and that it understood because it's right next to you what you received from the eclipse. And as many plants do that grow beside us, it's as if they sort of energetically, chemically morph themselves to be just right for us. So it took that download from the eclipse and it's inviting you to pick one of its flowers. And you pick this flower and you hold it in your hands and you know what you're going to do with it when you arrive, wherever you arrive back at home later on. You're going to make tea with this rose. Maybe you'll also make incense, but understand that this rose has received the downloads from the eclipse and is ready to support you. And with that, you keep the rose in your hand, you get up and you exit the courtyard. You walk down that columnar hall, you pass the lions, you get back into the boat, and you continue your journey. And now, whenever you're ready, I'm just going to invite you to slowly come back to this gathering. You can keep your camera off, you can keep your eyes closed. But I wanted to kind of add that last layer. Not all herbalists believe in this, but there is a branch of people that and herbalists that really look to the energy that a plant grows around. And I'm reminded when I used to work at farmers markets, there was a guy named Jose who had the best produce at the Portola Valley Farmers Market. And one day I got up the courage to ask him what he did to make his food taste so good. And he looked over his shoulder and he said, "Well, you're the crystal lady, so I'll tell you." And I said, "What's he going to tell me?" And he said, "Well, I play the Beatles on my tractor to my vegetables." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's precisely that plants absorb energy. So anyhow, thank you guys for being here. I just want to invite you to, we're working with one plant during one very special lunar cycle here. And I'm swinging the doors open. There's something I do called the Lunar Herbal Alchemy Circle. We gather every new moon and full moon, and we meet an herbal ally for every lunar cycle. And we really share rituals. And the thing that I love about it, it's about embodying it, not just scanning it. And, it's a community that grows slowly. It's one season, one herb at a time. It is not a class. And so I just wanted to let you know that there's no rush, there's no pressure. If it's something that interests you, there's a monthly membership you can cancel anytime. There's also an annual membership where you get 3 months free if you join the annual. And if you happen to be so inspired and you want your Lincoln roses for eclipse season, I am offering to put them in the mail to you within 24 hours if you happen to want to join. If you happen to want to order this particular type of rose, not that I'm selling it, the other roses work just as well, but there's also you can also just simply buy the rose petals. So thank you guys. And I just want to let you know, where we're headed. And there's going to be another gathering here in a couple weeks, and we're going to talk about the full moon lunar eclipse. We're going to talk about continuing our journey with this incense. And I really just kind of wanted to say that one of the reasons why I love this work is that I'd mentioned it in the podcast, that this idea that we're the conduit, the sky offers us this energy and this information, and the stars and the planets, there's this perspective that we get. And then the plants give us this earthly companionship. It's as if their rootedness helps us be rooted, right? And if we are the rooted ones and we're part of this consciousness that translates the stars into the 3D world, I would also say that ritual is as important as anything because the ritual to me is, it's just feels like a meditation. It's almost like it's an invitation for us to really to remember and to embody. So my wish for you for this cycle is that you have a blessed Lion's Gate today and that you have a wonderful eclipse on the 12th, and that if there's anything at all that inspires you or anything else I can share with you. Teresa, you asked about the midheaven with if that is where the eclipse is hitting exactly. Well, your midheaven is about very much like 10th house themes. I would look at the 10th house, but that's your career, that's your public persona. So if you wanted the reflection question, I would look to that. With that, thank you guys. Anybody have anything they want to share or anything else? We're right at the top of the hour. Look at how much we got through in just 1 hour. Yay. Okay. Well, you'll hear from me with a recording. Rosanna, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Just thank you. How much I appreciate this.
Oh, you're welcome. Laura says thank you too. Yeah, Aaron says thank you.
I
Oh,
agree.
yay. Oh my gosh, you guys are great. I love it. Yes, let's all be blessed because the world is an amazing and beautiful and expanding place. So, you'll hear from me with this recording. I'm going to get all the materials up on the public facing page too. So in case you're not a member and you don't have access to that, I'm going to, Rasa, you are welcome. You can look at the stuff again because I went over the houses pretty quickly. And y'all have my email address. So I'm here for this and I'm here for you. So if there's anything I can do or any questions I can answer, let me know. All right, guys. Have a blessed Lionsgate. Have a blessed eclipse. Hopefully I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Take care.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're welcome, Teresa.